Are you having a faith crisis? Are you trying to reconcile your understanding of scientific findings with your knowledge of Genesis? Did all of these Grand Canyon rock layers form in the 1 year of Noah's flood? Are the days of creation actual 24-hour days? Where was the Garden of Eden located? Did Methuselah really live to 969? Was Noah's flood global or local? Is evolution a belief or a fact? Were Adam and Eve real people? A Worldview Approach to Science and Scripture podcast series by geologist-apologist Carol Hill will help you find the answers to these questions and more. Science versus religion. What if there was never a conflict? Find out why, from a worldview approach, there is no conflict.
The purpose of this podcast series is to present solid science to the church, not to destroy faith, but to reconcile science with faith as a way to truth. This is not a young earth podcast, but is based on the sciences of archaeology, anthropology, geology, and astronomy. This is a new weekly podcast series, a worldview approach to science and scripture. Podcast series starts on Sunday, September 1st, 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 o'clock p.m. Central Mountain Time, and continues for 11 weeks total at the same time. Credits: narration by Daniel Hill. Royalty-free music composed by Dee Brown and produced by 2U Films, Steve Pointer. Hello, everyone. Now we're on podcast 4. We've gone from the days of Genesis to the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is another controversial topic, and it has been located by people way up in Armenia or down in India or even the lost continent of Atlantis. Emails from India from people that are absolutely convinced that the Garden of Eden was in India. Today, we're going to go to podcast 4, the Garden of Eden. Where was the Garden of Eden located? Was it a real place? Here's a picture of a Garden of Eden by Peter Wenzel in 1700s to 1800s. That's where he lived. Location of the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is another controversial topic. Was it a historical place or a mythological place? A worldview approach considers it to have been a real place, contrary to the evolutionary creationist position. Genesis 2:10-14 specifically identifies for the reader the location of the Garden of Eden. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became 2 foreheads. The name of the first is Pishon. That is it which encompasses the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and onyx stone. And the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is it that encompasses the whole land of Cush. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel, Tigris. That is it which goes toward the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates. The name of the first is Pishon, but within the land of Havilah, where is the Pishon River? Today, no river flows from the western mountains of Arabia to the Persian Gulf, but it did in antiquity, from about 3500 to 2000 BC. This old river system is now an underground river detectable by satellite, and rarely it does flow today. Genesis 2 is also correct about the gold being good. It is the gold mine believed to be the fabled Opal mine, the source of King Solomon's gold. It is also where onyx was mined and bdellium incense was grown, substances traded all over the ancient Near East, especially when the early cities, Uruk, Eridu, occupied the head of the Gulf. The first river is the River Pishon. The name of the second river is the Karen. The name of the third river is the Tigris. And the fourth river is Euphrates. Where the four rivers meet, the black circle, is the most likely location for the Garden of Eden. Regarding the Pishon River, I received an interesting email from a Saudi Arabian in 2008 who had read my article on the Garden of Eden on the American Scientific Affiliation's Perspective of Science and Christian Faith website. Here is what he said. I read your article on the Pishon River. This totally amazed me as something interesting happened recently. Just in November of 2008, there were very heavy rains in northern Saudi Arabia, the heaviest in 70 years. There was so much water that the desert turned into lakes. Still there, and people are jet skiing in these waters. So if you can visualize that, a bunch of Saudi Arabians actually jet skiing in the desert. The flow cleared a lot of dust and sand from an ancient riverbed that nobody cared much for. This is the Wadi Ruma, or Rima, as per the map in your article. I did go there a week later and saw the water was still flowing. Unfortunately, my camera conked out on me, but I do have pictures taken by others. This email supports the idea that Wadi Rimba, Wadi al-Batan, is the ancient Pishon River of Genesis 2:11-12, and if climatic conditions are right, it will flow again. This is the land of Mesopotamia. The main areas are Sumer, here, Sumerian, that's where Sumerian comes from, Babylonia, Elam, which is essentially Iran here, and then Akkad, and here's Assyria, and this is Urartu, right up here. These are the main areas of Mesopotamia, surrounded by the Zagros Mountains, the Taurus Mountains, the Amanus Mountains, and the Arabian High Line here. This shows the meteorology. These are the two cyclone patterns that take place in the summer and the winter, or spring. That's when these cyclones pass through. This large area here is the route of Noah's Ark from Shuruppak, which was essentially Noah's hometown, all the way to Jabba Judy. Despite some speculation about the exact location of the Garden of Eden, it does seem likely that it was located somewhere about 100 miles northwest of Basra, right here in Iraq, in the area of Al-Ubud, Eridu, and Ur. Here are the three oldest known settlements located in southern Mesopotamia. Sumeria cuneiform texts describe Eridu as when the kingship was lowered from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. In Eridu, Alum became king. Some scholars speculate that Alum was the Sumerian name for Adam, and that the altar at Eridu dates from about the 5th millennium BC. A river rises in Eden, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became 4 heads. This passage has been problematical to biblical scholars for years because the King James Version says, went out of. And then after leaving the garden, it splits into 4 rivers, heads, including Tigris and Euphrates. To some scholars, this places Eden in Armenia at the headwaters of these 2 rivers. However, this interpretation does not fit with the Pison River being in Arabia. Furthermore, modern translations of biblical scholars Kenneth Kitchen and E.A. Spicer interpret Genesis 2:10 as a river rising up into a garden within a place called Eden. A garden in Eden. Very strictly, it is not the Garden of Eden at all, but a garden in Eden. It has to be grasped very clearly that the garden was simply a limited area within a larger area, Eden, and the 2 are not identical or of equal area. In addition, a river rises in is how the Hebrew should be translated, not the traditional went out of. A river which rises in Eden strongly suggests ground flow or the rise of subterranean water, that is, a spring. And the word outside, which in the Hebrew literally means from there, has the sense of being beyond it, that is, beyond Eden. Possible geologic evidence for Eden's location. A spring rising forth in or near Eden makes sense. All 4 rivers, the Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates, once converged near the then head of the Persian Gulf to create a fertile land fit for a garden. Not only was this garden located near the junction of these 4 rivers that the Genesis 10 author identifies for its readers, but a spring supplied water for a small river that flowed from Eden to the confluence of the 4 rivers. This scenario also has geologic evidence to support it. The Daman Formation is the principal aquifer, that means water-bearing rock, for all of Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain. The Daman is a limestone rock unit which covers an extensive part of western Iraq, occurring both on the surface and in the subsurface with water upwelling from springs beneath the Gulf, called Kawabk. The formation is known to crop out only a few miles southwest of Eridu, thus a spring in the vicinity of Eridu, Eden, would not be all surprising from the hydrology of this region. As a side note, I would like to say that I know cavers that have been caving in the Daman Formation where the water table has dropped and cavers roped down into the caves left when the water table was high. And the Daman Formation, though, still goes to the Persian Gulf where it releases its water now, and it's the water source for Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain. Garden of Eden on a modern landscape. This is the dam information that I'm talking about. It's the top unit along the surface here, and it's the formation I was talking about that I have friends that have gone into the caves down there, and this aquifer then empties underneath the Persian Gulf. The purpose of this diagram is to show that flood geologists' claim of all sedimentary rock having formed in Noah's flood is not biblically correct. Genesis identifies Eden as being on a modern landscape, not on basement rock, 6 miles in the surface. That's how deep they're saying the location of Garden of Eden is. This means that the pre-flood Garden of Eden had to have been on the crystalline basement rock, with no trace of it still remaining after the flood deposited 6 miles of sedimentary rock. This is not what Genesis says. The Genesis says that the Garden of Eden, the location of it, is still there on a modern landscape. Then I have all the things that are still there. The gold is still there. The rivers are still there. The pitch is still there. Everything it says, but they put it way down here. Note in this cross-section of the Persian Gulf area, which is essentially the area of Kuwait, you've got the exact same 4 rivers of Genesis are there. The Mahad Ad Dabhad gold mine is still there. The Mound of Asher that was west in Asteria is still there. Hit, where pitch was collecting for the building of Noah's Ark, is still there. In fact, this picture over here shows workers collecting pitch from Hit. So the question is, how could Noah have gotten pitch from sedimentary rock if none yet existed? The worldview approach concludes that Eden could have been a real place identified by Genesis. What's on for next week? Next week, we will cover one of the topics that perplexes and intrigues many people, Christians and non-Christians alike: the numbers and chronologies of Genesis. Did Methuselah really live to 969 years? Why do so many biblical numbers seem to be 3, 7, 12, or 40? Can Earth's age be calculated from the chronologies of Genesis? I hope to see you next week for this highly controversial issue of the numbers of Genesis, which issue has caused a lot of people not to believe in Christianity. So I hope to see you there.